Tell me about sports as a kid, when
Yeah.
you were growing up in Canada, what they meant to you, and now, with a little bit of distance, what you learned from them.
Yeah. I mean, growing up, I grew up in a small town called Wainwright, Alberta. And, at that time, being a kid was about playing sports. I tried to play as many sports as I could when I was a kid. Obviously, hockey was always the favorite, but, I always golfed from a young age. I remember getting dropped off. You couldn't drive yet or nothing. At 8 or 9 years old, the mom would pick you up after work and you'd spend the whole day at the course. Baseball was something that my dad and grandpa have always had a big passion for. So I probably played hardball until I was 13 or 14, and it's probably my second favorite sport to this day.
As a kid, you learn about, injuries. Do you remember the first time that you got significantly hurt that you had to miss time?
In terms of major injuries, I was 15 or 16 when I tore my ACL for the first time, and you know that was definitely very emotional. Being told you're not going to play hockey for a season, basically. So. Um, but it's toughened me up to this point, and obviously, unfortunately, I've had to deal with this, too many times. But when this happened again, it was for me, it was an easy decision to just give yourself the 48 hours, feel sorry for yourself, and then get ready to tackle the challenge ahead because this is what I want to do. So, um, it wasn't as if it was a hard decision. If you're gonna get through it, you knew you were going to, you just knew it wasn't going to be easy.
What do you remember about being the
Yeah.
hardest thing? Was it the physical part of it, or was it the mental part?
No, I remember, I think when I was 18, the second time I did it, I had to. So I did it in September. So I missed the whole season. So at that time, I was playing with the Medicine Tigers in Alberta in the WHL. And I was away from the team all winter. So that was kind of, that was your group, that was your family, your purpose a little bit at that time in your life. And I remember being at home in Wainwright doing the physio and rehab. The hardest part was just being away from the group. Obviously, the physical side, you're limited to what you can do, but the mental part of not being, not feeling like you're part of something was probably the hardest part, and still is to this day. Going through this process is the mental side of it can sure swing you one way or the other, um, in your recovery time and how it all plays out.
You're on your fourth. Does it get harder, or does it actually get easier?
I think the hardest part was I remember in Vegas being in the room after and just being like, initially right away, just wondering how you're gonna go through this again. Like, um, am I gonna go through it again, kind of thing. So the emotional side of it was very hard right away, and just dealing with the reality of knowing what it was. I mean, I didn't even need a doctor to tell me the injury because I knew what the feeling was like and I knew what the diagnosis was going to be. But I remember coming out of the surgery, driving home. My sister came down to take care of me for a few days, and just already knowing like that I was ready to get going again. And I think I'm seeing through this process. Obviously, I've matured in age and whatnot, but mentally, this is probably the most dialed in I've ever been through this. And I think it helps knowing what to expect. So it doesn't make it any easier, accepting reality of what you got to go through. But I think knowing mentally the daily challenges has really helped me to this point. And I'm 2 months out of this thing, and I feel like I'm going to jump over the moon by the end of this. So mentally, definitely in a good spot.
This is a blog for young athletes. What would you share with them about, not just being hurt, but, maybe, when you're in the doghouse, when your game's
Yeah.
not quite where it wants to be.
Throughout my career, there's been times where certainly you get down on yourself. You don't like the spot you're in. You try to blame someone else and you wonder why it is what it is. What I've tried to do over the years is just be where your feet are and be present. Don't look too far ahead at anything. Don't compare yourself to guys who are 2 years older than you, 2 years behind you. If you can look at yourself in the mirror every day and say you're putting in an honest effort, you're going to get rewarded for that eventually. It just might not be right now. So, I mean, be where your feet are and being present is something that's very important. And in terms of like the injuries or, getting cut or not selected or whatever it may be for young athletes, adversity is the greatest teacher. I can attest to that. I've learned the most about myself in times of injury or failure. And I'll tell you what, you sure lean on those hard days, when things are going your way and you're thankful for them and grateful for what you had to go through. Nobody's journey is the same, and unfortunately, mine's got a few injuries that have been pretty significant. But once again, I'm gonna get through this and look back on it and know that I'm better from it.